I wanted to do a video on a more serious topic than videos that I've been posting recently. Um, Particularly, I wanted to talk about psychosis and how I have experienced psychosis. Um, just because I think everybody experiences everything in a completely different way. So I thought I would share my experience with it. Um, it's funny because whenever I honestly never thought it was strange, if that makes any sense. You're so wrapped up in the delusion of what's happening that even when it is over, you don't even see anything strange with it. Like, I didn't see it as strange at all. It was just something that I thought at the time. And then maybe afterwards I would think, oh, well, that was silly, but that was it wasn't a matter of like, oh, this was a delusion, this was a psychotic delusion, legitimately. And it's not, that thought didn't go through my head. It wasn't really until a couple months ago when I was going through like the whole song and dance with my psychiatrist, trying to figure out what was going on and, like what I've experienced in the past and blah, blah. It wasn't until then that I realized that that was my mental illness. Up until then, it was just something that I thought from time to time. That was the way I saw the world occasionally. I never really saw anything weird with it. There's a couple different ways that I experience psychosis. And I'm just kind of winging this, by the way, so I'm sure I'm going to forget some things. But I've talked about, the first way that I've talked about a lot before is the radio that plays in my head. All the damn time. Not all the time. Like, I should step back. It's not all the time that the radio plays in my head. It hasn't happened recently. Since I've been medicated, it's been, the radio's been a lot quieter. I'll say that. And it's not completely turned off. It's almost like, okay, before, and it was something that I really didn't know it was strange. I didn't know it was weird. And, it's like having 7 different stations playing on a radio at the exact same time. You hear a conversation of imaginary people. You hear imaginary dogs barking. I hear that all the time. Imaginary dogs barking. Or you hear things breaking or crashing. That one's really common for me. That kind of stuff will actually happen in the middle of the day. I'll think that somebody has just shattered like a glass or something, and they haven't. It just sounds that way. And that happens to me often. That still happens to me, actually. Wow. I'm trying to like think. I wish I would have written this down because I probably sound like I sound really disjointed. But it primarily happens worse at night. It happens like the radio in my head, and it's more that it keeps me awake. That's how I know it's there, because it's something. Some people have said, well, what's the difference between that and just your thoughts? And in my experience, because I've tried to explain it to particularly my husband, who doesn't really, he obviously doesn't get that. He doesn't understand it. Not only does he not like get it, like actually get it, like he doesn't get the radio playing in his head, he doesn't understand it. So I've tried to differentiate it where it's a radio that you can't turn off. A thought is something that you can kind of change. You can play an active role in how your thoughts progress. With a voice in your head, you have absolutely no control over it. You can talk to it, you can listen to it, but you can't turn it off. And I think that's the difference, because somebody who doesn't hear it, somebody who doesn't hear the voices in their head, they don't really know what it sounds like. To just a regular explanation would make it sound like it's just your thoughts just kind of run amok, you know, and to some extent that's true, but it's more because a voice in your head is not, it can be an external voice, but not all the time. Most of the time, the voices I hear are inside my head. They're clearly inside my head. But it's not something I can turn off. It's not something I can change, and it's nothing that I have control over. When I get particularly manic, that's when I'm more likely to experience other kinds of psychosis. And my psychosis kind of expressed itself. I think this is pretty quote unquote normal. For a lot of people, it expressed itself with religious experiences. And I thought that a goddess was following me at one time. I've mentioned it before. It's not that she was, there were things that happened, there were very specific things that happened that I, literally until a couple months ago, I still believed it happened. Like, I believed it happened just as my dad would come to visit for dinner. You know, I believed it happened up until a couple months ago. There were things that I saw, there were things that I heard, that there was no doubt. None. There was no doubt that I had actually been visited by her. There was one time I was driving in the car, and I looked in the rearview mirror, and I saw her sitting in the back seat. To me, that was definitive proof that she was there. There was another time, it was also while I was driving. There was somebody, I was talking to my friend who was sitting in the passenger seat, and I was like coming up to a stoplight, but the person in front of me slammed on their brakes, but I didn't realize it, and I felt something grab my knee and push my foot down onto the brake. I had no control over it. It was as if something else was taking control of the car and telling me that I needed to stop. Things like that happened to me where it was like, there's no doubt this actually happened. You know, to say that now, I have never told anybody about that. I told my friend when I was talking to her, the one that was sitting in the passenger seat. When it happened, I told her about it. She's always been a really religious person, so she didn't like, the way I said it was, I said it was a guardian angel. It felt like a guardian angel was telling me to, or was having me stop the car. A guardian angel was taking control over the car. And I had never told anybody else about that. I never even told my psychiatrist about that. I mentioned, like, her following me, you know, but the doctor never really asked for an explanation of, like, what specifically happened. What did I see? What did I hear? It's almost like she wasn't even interested in that, but there were legit things that I experienced that in my head, even, like I said, up until a couple months ago, I did believe that happened. I had no doubt. I didn't see it as a delusion. I just thought it was something like, oh, this just happened. It's not happening anymore. I don't understand why it's not happening anymore. I kind of miss it. But I'm not going to tell anybody about it because I realize that I sound like a crazy person. I get it. I get how that sounds. And that's why I never talk about it. I think, like, I'm afraid of coming off as, I like to have the persona of somebody who's very put together. I like for people to think that I'm really thick-skinned and nothing gets to me. I like people to think that. And that's just not true. None of that is true. I don't have anything put together. On the inside, I'm completely falling apart. And I am a hot mess in general. I'm just a big hot mess. Not so much now. Maybe up to like a year ago. I was a raging hot mess. And I didn't want anybody to know that I was like falling to pieces. What else do I do when when I was in high school, I grew up Catholic, very, very Catholic. And when I was in high school, I got involved in Wiccan. As it's not entirely unusual for somebody that goes to a Catholic school to eventually kind of go that way. Just because you get stuffed down, at least for me, it gets stuffed down your throat. And then you think that your natural tendency is to rebel as a teenager, and that's just what you do. So anyway, I used to practice Wiccan, I used to practice witchcraft, and I used to believe that I could control the weather, I could control the birds, I could control animals. I used to think, and this is another thing, I used to believe that this is another thing that I used to believe up until like literally a couple months ago. I used to think that I could influence a series of things that would happen that would make an ultimate thing happen. I used to think, this person's I need to see a person walk by with pink shoes, and then I need to see a dog come this way, I need to hear that dog bark twice, I need to hear a train come behind me, and then I need to see a car go this way, I need to see a black Fiat go that way, or something like that. And I used to think that I could predict the future as to each of those things happening. And I used to think that whatever the final, that meant something big. That meant, sometimes, if we're being perfectly honest, I still believe that. I still think that, because I used to, when I was younger, I used to dream things that would later come true. And I mean that. I still believe that. That's something I don't believe is a delusion. I think that that's totally true. I used to see things happening in that series of events. And then if that series of events repeated itself from my dream, that meant, and that means, that something big is happening. That, and it usually means a good thing. That's a good thing. It's not like this has happened and that means doom. This has happened and that means something awesome is going to happen. There's like an awesome pinnacle of every event that is happening. I still believe that. I don't believe that's a delusion. It might be. It might be. I might be totally raving like a crazy person right now, but I believe that. And I believe that my dreams still show the future. I think that when I first started taking medication, and this is something I've never told anybody, not even my psychiatrist, because I believed that they were against me and they were trying to control me. And when they were trying to give me Um, when my psychiatrist first gave me trazodone, I would sleep a dreamless sleep. And this is one of the reasons why I didn't like taking it. Because I believed that it was kind of him working against me. This is how they control you. This is how he was controlling me. Because he was giving me something that would give me a dreamless sleep. And to me, my dreams were so central. And they still are. My dreams are so central to me. To give me something that gives me a dreamless sleep was unacceptable for me. And even Seroquel, to a certain extent, gives me a dreamless sleep, but not totally. I can still dream. And it's almost like the loss of dreams. That's my last neuroses. Really. That's the last thing I have control over. You know, they're taking away everything else. And the fact that I can dream, that's the last shred of myself that I have left. So, that was actually one of the driving factors behind me not taking trazodone anymore. And I'm kind of burying this in this video on purpose because I am assuming that most people haven't made it this far. And that's okay, because it's not something that I'd really want everybody to know. You know, it's there's certain things that I wouldn't talk about because I understand that it makes me sound like a legit crazy person. I understand. When there's a couple things that there were three things that I believed I predicted the future in my dreams. When I posted the video before about my friend Christina that had killed herself, I had a dream that one of my friends from my close circle was going to die. She was going to die in her bed. And then I had, like, the dream continued where we were all around a casket and we were all crying. And I believed, and I didn't really realize that until, like, it was 2 weeks later that she died. And then a week after she died, I had a dream that she had come to visit me. And I believed that. And I told all of my friends that she visited me in a dream. And I didn't see that as odd at the time. Now I do. But I didn't then. I dreamed that my grandfather had died. And then a week later he died. I had a dream about, it was a couple days or a week before 9/11 happened. I had a dream that it wasn't a, because 9/11 had, nothing like 9/11 had ever happened before. Ever anybody watching this, this is not new news, you know, everybody knows nothing like that ever happened before. I had a dream that that a plane had run into a building, and the building had fallen, and I remember in the dream that there was an overarching theme of patriotism. You know, I'm in general a very patriotic person, I always have been. And in the dream I knew that it had something to do with the United States. I just knew it. And then, like a week later, when that actually happened, it was almost like I have some kind of supernatural ability that I am almost wasting. You know, I believed that I had some kind of ability. And I've always, if we're being perfectly honest, even up until then, I still believe, you know, there were things that happened even before that I believed I had this kind of supernatural ability that I was wasting. But it didn't happen all the time, you know, and that was the weird part, because that's the part I didn't understand. The fact that it didn't happen all the time, that was the part that was like, that even in my head I couldn't sort it out. I couldn't make it happen. You know, I couldn't will myself to tell the future. It just kind of happened. And then after the fact, it would be like, wow, I am some kind of a clairvoyant, you know. So, yeah, all of that stuff was buried at the end of this video on purpose. Because, like I had said earlier in the video, I like to appear very put together. And I like to have a persona of thick skin and being very put together. And I'm really not. I'm really not. It's just that I fear talking about my real thoughts to people, because if people knew what was going on in my head most of the time, it's brutal, and nobody knows what's going on in my head, and it's good that way. It's better that way. So